Hey everyone, welcome to Stronger, and I am back with one of my favorite people, Dr. Jordan Shallow. Last episode he was on, he talked more about pain. Now we're bringing him on to discuss recovery, and there's so many things. I mean, recovery is such a word that's, I think, thrown around so loosely, right? We just sometimes think that taking a day off is about recovery, and Jordan explains that sometimes that day off where you do absolutely nothing, you might come back feeling worse. He stressed that recovery starts with smart programming, and I think that's brilliant. So many of us go into the gym or we go run and we just do things frivolously without any plan in mind, and you might feel great for the first couple of days, and then weeks down the road, you're like, what's wrong with me? Why am I tired? Why do I feel worse? Why am I out of breath going up the stairs? So if you're interested in some of those things or that happens to you, you may want to listen to this. He used the analogy of a stress bank account. I love this one. I never heard it. Every workout is a withdrawal, and if you don't manage deposits like food, sleep, and lifestyle, you'll end up overdrawn. So this is where smart programming comes down to. And when we go in for things like exercise, which we know is really healthy, if we're not being mindful of other things in our life, like our sleep, like our stress, what's going on at home, out of nowhere, you might feel like you get hit with a ton of bricks. So he also talks about the importance of nutrition, sleep, and hydration, how this stuff's going to by far outweigh things like saunas and cold plunges. Even though we like these things, I think some of us put so much emphasis into those things and not the basics. And at the end, he listened to some questions coming in. One was on an ACL surgery, recovery, explaining the real progress isn't just about building knee strength, but also fixing the mechanics and forces that caused the injury to happen in the first place. I think you guys are going to love this episode. Jordan is one of the brightest minds in the space. I can't tell you how much of a sounding board he is for me. I just called him last night about a couple of questions, and you know, Sierra knows he's over at the house all the time, and I'm always just trying to extract information out of him. But also one of my closest friends. He's like a little brother to me. So let's get going. I know you guys are going to love this one. All right, guys, first off, I have to thank my sponsors, one of them right now being MitoPure. Thank you guys for just being a loyal sponsor of ours. Probably, I think it was our first one. Was that our first sponsor? Yeah, I think it was. I'm saying it was. So they have a few different products. They have MitoPure, which is a urolithin A product, which is why I am in my 60s and I look like I'm in my early 40s. So I've been taking this product for a while. My skin, my lines, my energy level, my mitochondrial function is fantastic. And this is one of those supplements. I like supplements, but you got to understand, I really value the importance of nutrition and sleep. MitoPure, their urolithin A supplement, I take 4 capsules a day. That's 1,000 milligrams. I take it religiously, and I really can't travel without it now because I have seen benefits come from this with probably about 3 to 6 months. I just started feeling like my skin was glowing a little bit more. I was feeling a bit younger. I was. Okay, I'm not 60. I'm 48. Cat's out of the bag now. They also have these gummies that are delicious. And they also have a powder, which is fantastic as well if you're into powders. So that's it, guys. MitoPure, again, thank you again. Timeline, thank you. And Timeline is offering 20% off your first order of MitoPure. Go to timeline.com/stronger. That's TIMELINE.com/stronger. I can't believe I actually had to read how to spell timeline. I did, though. Thanks, guys. All right, back on the Stronger podcast, my main man, Dr. Jordan Shallow. Thank you for a part 2.
Thank you for having me.
Grateful to have you. I had a question come in, so we're going to do something that we've never done. We're going to actually start with this question because today our episode is going to be on recovery. We're going to be able to spend plenty of time on that. But this is in from, what's his name? John from Idaho. So Dr. Shallow, huge fan. My name is John from Idaho, and I've been following your work for a while now. I had a quick question about recovery that I'd love your insight on. I've always been really regimented with my training and consistent with my workout schedule. That said, I've noticed that on my rest days, when I try to just sit around and do nothing, I actually end up feeling worse, more stiff, more fatigued, and even a bit off mentally. Is that common? And do you recommend a more active approach to recovery instead of complete rest? Thanks so much for all your knowledge you put out there and really appreciate what you do.
Yeah. Okay. So first off, it's a great question.
It's a great question.
And we're going to have to make a few assumptions.
Sure.
That he trains hard.
Sure.
Right. That his training is rigorous, and his nutrition and sleep and hydration are all standardized.
Sure.
Right. Because those are massive variables that change the answer to the question.
Mm-hmm.
So if you grant me those assumptions, the answer that I'll give is yes, it is completely normal. right? Because the stiffness you're feeling on your rest days is a culmination of the sympathetic drive on your training days, right? So adding another training drive pushes that feeling that like, so here's maybe something that may help. Have you ever had a big life event? So for example, for me is when I graduated chiropractic college, I'd been in school at 9 years at that point, finally reached the end of the tunnel. And I remember December 15th, 2024 through till early in the new year, I was sick as a dog. Because you don't realize that you're just a frog boiling in water, right? It's just the temperature's just been turning up for so long, and then you're just surviving, and the next thing you know, the bottom falls out of that experience, and your body goes, Right. So it's like, yeah, here, I was graduated feeling good. My parents, I think we may have went on a trip or something, and then like the second the dust settled, your body then came and said, hey, whose tab is this? We got to close this thing out. And you're like, oh shit.
Oh no.
And so I think what you're seeing here, if granted those assumptions, is a microcosm of that, right? And it's very common and borderline intuitive to feel like, well, I feel good on training days, therefore it's like, yeah, on the 7th day you might want to rest, dude. Like that's written somewhere, I'm pretty sure. And the reason that is because those rest days are elective, and you're enduring this malaise or this fatigue or this brain fog. It's like, trust me, sitting on the couch, and if you don't have that, if you don't have those 6 days or whatever of training, it's great. I'm sure It feels great, but that is part of the process, right? That is part of the recovery process, is enduring that and not succumbing to. Because if and it sounds like, based off of the question, that this person has been able to be consistent for a long time, that they are regimented and structured, and you have something that's working, that every piece of it is necessary, right? So I think it's a really common thing that people go down. I don't particularly like rest days, but if you're training hard enough, they either become warranted, or you can elect to do them. Right? Like those rest days will find you, right? You think you feel bad on your rest days when you're, watching Sunday Night Football. Wait until the demand for that rest day hits you on a Monday morning before you go to work.
Sure.
Right? So, or it hits you in the gym when you go into your top set. Like you have to mitigate the effects of fatigue. You have to, just from a neurotransmitter standpoint, you have to not necessarily hit the reset button, but if you're training as hard as it sounds like you are, this is collateral for that and a prerequisite to continually being able to perform.
Is it wrong that people are always striving to almost feel perfect, right? Like they're always trying to be fully recovered. And like you said earlier, like me and you have run into each other and how you doing? I'm like, I'm exhausted. You're exhausted. Like we're always working, training, air travel, family, life, things. Is it unrealistic to think that you're going to wake up and like my readiness is going to be through the roof and all this stuff? Like a lot of times we are just gritting it out and we're pushing through. But do you think sometimes this recovery element, though it's incredibly important, incredibly needed, and I'm not devaluing that, but sometimes people start getting a bit lazy because they're always reverting to, I have to recover. I'm like, well, you're getting in worse shape because you're just not training hard enough anymore and you're not training enough, or you understand?
Yeah. Recovery for me, recovery starts with exercise programming, right? And then exercise programming starts with like a detailed history. So there's this idea of this allostatic load, which is how much stress can you endure while still being able to progress, right? Because allostasis may sound familiar. It sounds a lot like homeostasis, which is like, the body's wanting this to maintain normalcy, right? Like if you think about an example I'll use is body temperature. Was it like 98.7 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that? And if you ever spiked a fever?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. We all have. Mm-hmm. You have a very small window to increase body temperature before things go really wrong really fast, right? Like, I don't know, it was hot as hell in New York City the last couple of days. Mm-hmm. I couldn't tell you the difference between 93 degrees and 100 degrees. Couldn't tell you the difference. I walk out, I wear all black. I'm walking through Central Park. How hot is it? It's hot. It's hot is the answer. 93, 90, 100, whatever, doesn't matter. 7 degrees, imperceptible difference to me. But to my body, oh my God, if you spiked a fever
1 degree,
105,
yeah. Oh my
brain
God.
damage.
Yeah.
You better be on the way to somewhere to figure this out, or you don't have much time left, right? So our body really likes this homeostasis. Allostasis is the application of stress within a confine, within a limit that we can adapt to, right? So we can stimulate, respond, and adapt. So a lot of exercise programming is understanding, well, what is our bank account for stress? Right? Like I tell a story. When I first started my clinical practice, I had a gentleman who was in the military and a gentleman who was a paralegal at a law firm in San Francisco. Law firm guy, worked for a defense lawyer. He's a public defender, kind of known for he wanted to get people out of jail that did bad things. And so this guy worked for him. And then I had this other guy who was like, you actually, I know you know a lot of these people because you've introduced me to them. People who like just tell you that I'm in the military, and they say it with this like smile and this nonchalant of like, oh, I know that means to not ask any more questions, right? Like I don't want to know what you do for work, but we both know what it entails. So I used to see these guys back to back at my office all the time. And, part of like working with me is you come from your elbow or a knee. It's like, if we don't talk about your exercise, we're not, I'm not cracking necks or anything like that. So I get into exercise programming with them, and we work together with the paralegal, and we're like, right, based on your job, because I'm thinking like, hey, paralegal guy works in SF. He's got to read books or briefs or whatever, get his boss's coffee, but like, it's not that heavy, dude. You have some late nights here and there, but other than that, you're in a climate controlled building all day. And you're not lifting anything heavy. You're not on a construction site. So like, okay, so let's shoot for like 5 days a week. Military guy comes in, and he'll go for like months on end and come back. And like, where were you? I was in Nicaragua. So I'm thinking this guy's like got the most stressful job in the world. Mm-hmm. Whatever he's doing, he's like covert, black ops. Like no one knows. He's some Jason Bourne shit. Fast forward 3 or 4 months. They have these programs. Neither of them are getting better. Neither of them are getting stronger. And I'm sitting there like, what the fuck am I missing? The guy that worked at the law firm, God-fearing kid from the Midwest, struggled every day that his boss was just a notable deviant into society, wrestled with the morals and the ethics of helping this guy get the worst people in the world back on the streets. His job, when I looked at it and was like, oh, this is like super stressful. This is not super stressful. You get your boss's coffee, you read some briefs, you go to court, you write some stuff down, guilty, not guilty. I'm like, what's so heavy about it? But that was my perception of his stress, not his perception of his stress, right? Where the military guy loved it. Whatever he did, God bless him, whatever he did down there in Nicaragua or over in Sierra Leone or wherever he went, this guy woke up early for this stuff. So here I'm thinking like, man, that sounds like a stressful job. It's like, yeah, it'd be stressful if I was Jason Bourne. I would be working out 2 to 3 times a week. So I was writing their program from my perception. I flipped. I literally just went, yeah, here, try this.
Yeah.
5 days a week for this guy. He's like, oh, man, dude, change the program, feel amazing. Yeah. It's like, yeah, we were undershooting on this guy. This guy is sitting in a safe house somewhere in I don't know, Ghana.
Not doing anything.
Not doing anything. Now he can train. Now he's actually starting to get the stimulus he can adapt from. Meanwhile, I'm like thinking, now this guy's got PTSD, shell shocked. He's like, he's wired for this. And then the other guy on 2 to 3 days a week, he was able to, that was enough for him to start progressing. Right. Right. So, when the moral of this is like, when you really strip down recovery, it's about a bank account. It's about what can you afford? Because a lot of the modalities and more active approaches that, he was asking about, those are withdrawals, not deposits. Right. So, it is very tricky because in order to really embody the answer to this question, you have to dig all the way back to like, all right, what do you got? Like, what's your bank account allow you to recover for? And let's program from there. Right. Because I think in this case, granted the assumptions that we were granted, I think it's very much necessary and potentially signaling that he actually may need more rest. Right. How do you track that? Well, is your performance still indicating? Are you still staying healthy? Are you still able to train? If yes,
when you say performance, I mean, we're always, I mean, the one thing you and I have been pretty consistent with is like, well, are you getting stronger or is that skill improving? Right. Like, so I think for a lot of people who don't understand out there, if someone grabs 50-pound dumbbells and in week 1, they're like, here on the dumbbell press and they're all over the place. And in week 4, they're holding the 50-pound dumbbell presses, but now they're completely locked in. They've improved that skill. Like, I find that a drastic improvement. I'm looking at that as like, all right, well, the weight hasn't gone up, but I'm really happy. Like, the skill is way higher here. You really quantify a lot by strength. Right? I mean, that's besides skill, you're looking at, because you've written programs for me in the past, and the way that I quantify improvement would be, skill improving, or am I moving more weight, or am I moving more reps, or am I moving more weight in less time, or like there's so many different ways I feel like I can quantify, whether it's high rep or low rep. People ask me, well, you train light, you train heavy? I'm like, it's always heavy, because if I'm doing 20 reps, trust me, it's heavy. And if I'm doing 3 reps, it's really heavy. Like, it always feels heavy. Does that make sense? But you really have to understand not only someone's lifestyle, but you really have to understand the intensity that they're coming in and they're doing that workout in, because that could be going really well for a while, and then out of nowhere, they can get in a fight with their wife or get fired from a job, and like that program that might have been perfect for them completely changes. And that's something that I think that the average person isn't taking into consideration.
Yeah. So if you're skilled at lifting, what does that mean tangibly? It means you're probably driving more unit stimulus per unit effort, right? You were able to work closer to a proximity to failure. That's ultimately, when we talk about skill, your technique stays in a way where the tension stays on the muscle that you're trying to train, and it doesn't compensate into other muscles that have, different reserves and different leverages and different abilities to produce force. So that's when we talk about skill, like fundamentally, that's what we mean. So if someone is like good at lifting, which means like they have a high training age and they focus on technique, they've done that for a long time, they know the difference between pain and discomfort, and they can really, really push. Understanding that the exercise selection from a recoverability standpoint is going to be your most potent tool in active recovery, because when you look at it, you go, right, this person has the ability to redline any exercise I throw at them. There's not going to be a learning curve to the skill of this movement, right? They're going to be able to pick it up, and within a set or two, they're going to be able to bring it to a few reps of failure, if not to failure. If I understand that, I need to be very deliberate in the exercises I choose, because if I give them a leg press, a hack squat, a back squat, a safety squat bar, all of these heavy, very loadable exercises, and they're redlining each one, then we're accumulating way too much stress per unit effort, right? That stress, those are withdrawals we cannot account for.
And that could show up on joint inflammation, or just soreness that isn't recovering, or maybe just
poor sleep quality,
fatigue,
appetite, sex drive, you name it. Like the ramifications of that type of accumulation of a fatigue is going to start affect. For most people, it's actually sleep. And sleep quality goes to shit. Take an extra rest day. That's a good proxy for good lifters who push really hard. But after you wake up, ask yourself, okay, where is the opportunity to use the constraint of exercise selection to reduce the overall stress while still driving stimulus? So for example, if someone's, can take a back squat to pretty much muscular failure on a particular muscle group, I'm going to sub that out with an exercise that has a deliberate constraint to overall load. Like, hey, you've been pushing for a while. We had back squats in the program for a while. For the next couple of weeks, I want your squatting pattern to be a split squat with a dumbbell in the opposite hand of the foot that's forward. And I don't have to give them a constraint. I don't have to give them a cue. I've given them a constraint. I just say, okay, go. And they take it to the same subjective experience of intensity and pushing to failure. But what they end up with is, a 100-pound dumbbell in their hand, if like they're really strong, as opposed to a 225, 300, 400, 500 pounds on their back if they're really strong. And so we get the same subjective experience, but we're able to fit that recoverability into the budget. Right. And so I didn't go, hey, squat lighter, and this is a key component, is because I've introduced variability, right? There's going to be access to slightly different planes of motion. We're loading different tissues, which means we're not loading other tissues, which means they're recovering in those other tissues. So a lot of people have this template of training where it's like, I'm going to, I train this days a week, I take this day off, and I train for this many weeks, and then I take a deload week. It's like, That's not really how it works. Right. One of the number one, and this
it's a nice way to package it when you're trying to
Sure.
sell something. And a lot of these coaches do that, but that's not coaching for me is understanding when that person needs it.
And I think that in order to understand, and this is this may be a bridge too far, but I think it's useful in the conversation around, deloads and recovery and rest days is depending on, because I think you and I, me especially, when I have these conversations, I default into training being things with weights and the goal being strength and or hypertrophy.
Sure.
Where, most people, there's a cardiovascular component to their training. And it's like, that's a huge part to start to factor in when we think about recovery debt. And I think the best way to understand the importance of rank ordering cardiovascular adaptations and strength and hypertrophy adaptations is be able to look at the research and say, hey, we have a bunch of plates that are spinning physiologically in the body. And, as a coach or a trainer or a clinician, we're trying to keep all the plates in the air. I need to know which plate is spinning the slowest, because if that one falls, the rest of them fall.
Yeah. First off, we would not be able to do this incredible show without our special sponsors. I'm very grateful to Cozy Earth. Couple things. They sent me this bubble cuddle blanket. It's a bubble cuddle blanket. I'm a 48-year-old grown man. You'd think I wouldn't want to lay in this. And my dog, Sambuca, it's the same color of him. So when I go into my room, Sambuca's wrapped in this blanket. I can't tell he's in it. And he looks comfortable. And the next thing you know, I'm laying on a bubble cuddle blanket, in love with this thing. But guys, I'm telling you, this thing is magic. Your dogs are going to love it. Your partner's going to love it. Ladies, I don't care. This thing is unbelievable. And you know what's fantastic about it too? It's when I go down to the couch and I'm watching the Mets lose, I like grabbing a blanket and throwing it on me. And it's been a great throw blanket for me. So my dog loves it when we're laying in bed, and then I love it when I'm on the couch. So great stuff. Check it out. And something that I love even more than the bubble cuddle blanket are these Cozy Earth bamboo sheets. And the reason is that I get really hot. My body just gets hot in bed. My wife's going to kill me because the thermostat's on 64, 65 degrees. She's wrapped in the Cozy Earth bubble cuddle blanket to keep warm. And I'm sitting there how do I get my bed cooler? And these Cozy Earth bamboo sheets are actually cooling. Head to CozyEarth.com. I'm going to read now. Head to CozyEarth.com and use my code STRONGER for up to 20% off. That's CozyEarth.com. Code STRONGER, STRONGER. And if you get a post-purchase survey, make sure to let them know you heard about Cozy Earth right here. We want a pat on the back from Cozy Earth. We like them so much that we want them to know and feel like, you know what? We have their back, right? These partnerships are very important to us. So head to CozyEarth.com and use my code STRONGER for up to 20% off. That's Cozy, CozyEarth.com, code STRONGER. Thanks, guys. This episode of Stronger is presented by David Protein Bars. First off, the show would not be possible if it wasn't for our sponsors, so we're incredibly grateful. And the irony of this sponsor right now is that I am a fitness guy, and for years, I shied away. Sierra, would you believe I shied away from protein bars? There was just, there was evidence out and there was third-party testing, and the label that you saw on the protein bar was never really true to what was in the bar. Right? So I was very particular about bars. And then I did a deep dive on David Protein Bars. My son started becoming obsessed with David Protein Bars. So I think that is always telling when a kid loves the taste of something and you realize that the label is that good. It's impressive. 28 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, 150 calories. I don't even need to look at my notes. I think I'm on 20 grams of protein, 150 calories, and 0 sugar. All right, so this shows I mean it. So after weeks of being out of stock, they're offering our listeners a special deal. Buy 4 cartons and get the 5th one free when you go to davidprotein.com/stronger. Are we getting free bars from them, or we better get on it? Take advantage of that offer right there. That's pretty impressive. That's davidprotein.com/stronger. Prefer to shop in person? Well, David is now in over 5,000 stores nationwide. Check out their store locator to find a location nearest you. David, you guys are the best. Thank you again.
When I look at recovery, how can we increase the bank account? right? And really it comes down to the cardiovascular component. And cardio has a tricky feature to it. Say someone goes on vacation, right? 7 days, March break, going out with the kids. I only want you to do cardio. If you're going to work out at all, I'd rather you look, that's the thing. In 7 days, you're not going to lose strength. You're not going to lose hypertrophy, maybe 4 to 5 weeks. Strength, probably more like 6 to 7. Right. So if you're going for 7 days, fine. What are we culpable to losing in 7 days? What's going to be the first thing off? That's the hardest thing to get back.
VO2.
VO2, right? And then you get into like longer form, you get into the 2-week mark, you're looking at like endurance and metabolic conditioning. So it's like, look, yeah, the thing with this is it's not about deloading, which is something that, like you said earlier, it's been packaged and it's been sold and it's been repurposed. It's about devolume. You can't decrease intensity. You can improve the recovery bank account by not withdrawing as much. But if that withdrawal is at a certain rate, you got to make sure that you get at that rate. It has to be within that threshold of intensity.
I also believe that most people, they can't quantify whether they're truly overtraining because of training, or are they just, and you see it on the weekends come around and people just go to crap with their eating and their drinking. And that plays such a massive toll. Like last week I'm away in Grenada and I'm eating 3 meals a day and maybe a shake, and my calories are much lower. I'm really active. It's really hot. I'm on my feet. Yeah, my body felt it. Like it's not now. I didn't pick up a weight. I worked out the first Sunday I was there. I pulled off and I pulled off the ground, and I just said, for the rest of the week, this is my week. I'm just going to shut down. I'm going to focus on my group. And I got back and I was like, oh man, all right. Like body's like fatigue, strength didn't go anywhere, but I felt a little out of it for the first few days. It's not because I was training. It was because I definitely was undernourished. My calories were definitely too low. So that's obviously, and I know I'm not asking a question here. It's almost a reiteration. That's a massive part to all this. And I think people get so inconsistent with their calories. I think they were talking about Nick Walker the other day, bodybuilder. And they said, and I think Nick passed a comment like, I haven't missed a meal in 5 years. Now, Nick isn't, like, would you consider Nick a performance athlete? I consider him an athlete. He's a bodybuilder. He's got more muscle than almost anyone on the planet. I mean, is he out running marathons? No. But Nick understands the importance of getting his nutrition in and keeping in that nutrition quality high, so he's getting his protein, his carbs, and his fats, because he knows he ain't building muscle if he's missing meals. I think people aren't understanding the importance of their energy level, of their sleep quality, and I said energy performance when they miss a meal or two for 2 or 3 days in a row. Though they're consuming a lot of the right nutrition. If you're used to having 5 meals a day or 4 meals a day, and then you're suddenly having 2 for a few days, don't understand that that's probably why you're not sleeping properly. That's probably why you feel like shit during the day.
Yeah, I mean, you can throw hydration into that mix as well. And I think, it's how do we discuss the basics in a way where they land? Like, what is it going to take? I don't think anyone is blown away when they hear that, right? I think some of the maybe some of the research I think is helpful. Like if you look at, and I'm sampling this, I actually learned this originally from Andy O'Brien, friend, brilliant. I can't think of someone professionally that I've learned more from in my domain than him. He came on, we were working with some athletes, and he was talking about research that they did in the U.S. military on sleep. The U.S. military, if you ever watch old movies and you're going through, some sort of training camp or something like that, you're in recruitment, you're up at 4 a.m., the U.S. military had such an issue with stress fractures that they had to look into it. It's like, well, we're losing so many recruits to stress fractures. And, they looked at blood labs, they looked at every different variable you could imagine that you would attribute to increasing a stress fracture or likelihood of a stress fracture. And what they found was those people who got 2 hours more sleep, the likelihood, the risk profile fell out of the sky. And it's like, so much so that now, I haven't joined the military, but I've been told that there was a change in policy across the U.S. military where they're not allowed to in these, and I'm sure there's divisions where this isn't the case, but in general recruiting circles, they have to get X number of hours, of 6 to 8 hours of sleep. And this idea of where we're going to wake you up at 4 a.m. and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, you're not good to anyone if you have a stress fracture.
No.
And that was the single, far and away, the most potent variable. And the second they did that, all the stress fractures pretty much went away. Right. So it's like, I don't think there's anything new under the sun. Hydration, nutrition, sleep. It's like, yeah, we can hear that in passing on a podcast. That's great. But like when you quantify it and you go, oh shit. And then if you start to embody it and you start to like, I know when I haven't drank enough water to train.
Yeah.
Right. Like the performance depreciation and how drastic and how little it takes. Right. 5%, 10% underhydrated.
Yeah. It's going to show up.
It's going to show up.
Massive.
Right. So a lot of people, and this becomes difficult because how do we measure whether or not we've recovered adequately? It's like, well, performance is a pretty damn good way to do it. But if this is a start line that's moving every single day, that it's, I'm on my third meal. Oh, actually, I just had a coffee today. There's no common denominator to make a decision whether or not you recovered. It's like you have to bring it to baseline for us to have consistent data to make decisions off of. So it's like until we've standardized for these variables, you're guessing at best.
So what you're talking about right now, and I love that you said that I find beforehand is the most benefit. The only modality I use post-workout is really a sauna. That's otherwise I'm not like if it's a plunge, maybe Andy got me turned on. It's 30 seconds in the morning, like pre-workout type of thing. If it's red light therapy, first thing in the morning, if I don't have access to light, are there modalities that you lean into? Are there modalities you embrace? Because I feel like almost you focus more on the really important things, which I think are the things that a lot of people don't want to focus on, and they want to rely mainly on these other, modalities. Like it's gonna, I don't like to put it this way, but like it's gonna cure cancer, and it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I like certain modalities before training because I orient my focus towards quality and learning. So I'm using these tools not as recovery modalities, but I'm using these tools to start to stimulate different parts of the brain to create awareness about the body's position.
It's almost waking up the brain's connection with the body in really childish terms.
Yeah. Kinesiotape, compression, cupping, foam rolling, Theraguns, vibration plates. People wonder why these still get sold at mall kiosks. Right? Because they still kind of work. They don't work the way people...
But they're not doing what they say they're doing. That's the whole problem.
KT tape isn't improving lymphatic drainage, right? It's stimulating free nerve endings that relay the transmission and location of the stretch of the skin, right? But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a reason these things are robust and are able to survive. It's just, we just haven't come up with the right philosophy to ask the right questions. When you ask the right questions, now you're going to get better answers. Even if an answer is wrong under the right philosophy, it's better because you're well on your way to the truth. Where if you have the wrong philosophy and you get the right answer, it's still the wrong answer. I can learn how to play guitar way faster on a guitar that's tuned. At a high level,
yes. When
we talk about recovery, exercise programming is recovery.
Yes.
Right? At its fundamental, because that gives you the balance. Right? That gives you the balance of what you can recover from or what you're attempting to recover from. Right. And, kind of going back to those two anecdotes about those patients of mine, it's like you need to do an inventory. Recovery is an inventory. It's, what are the ins and outs? What are the P&Ls? Like, how are we able to, what deposits can we make in the gym with what's left outside of our lifestyle? Right. And then the thing is, and this is where I did a podcast with Sean Pastuch the other day, and he had such a great quote. It was mentally tough people don't do physically tough things. They make mentally tough decisions. And it's like, for me, the hard decision and how I keep, people, because I travel a lot, I train hard. People are like, well, how is it that you're able to keep up with this while I'm on the road? And it's this process that allows me to do it. Because today's been, pretty chill. Woke up by Central Park, did a bit of work, I'm probably 3 or 4 liters of water today. I've had a couple of meals. I brought a meal here. I ate in between. I'm going to go back. I'll probably drink a bit more, and then I'm going to eat a bit more, and then I'm going to train. So it's like when I get to the gym, I'm going to be able to push, right? I'm going to be, when I pick up that dumbbell, I'm going to go, yeah. Or I'm going to go to the heavier one and be like, yeah, this one. But, which happens more often than I care to admit, but the trick is, how do we apply it? When I wake up and it's 3:30 in the morning and my only option is to train now before I get on a 20-hour flight. and I'm probably not going to eat on the flight. And so I'm probably looking at a 24-hour impromptu fast because when I pick up the dumbbell, or maybe I go to a machine instead of the dumbbell, right? And all of that is like, well, what is the cost, the physiological expenditure of these implements? What is the withdrawal, and what is the account at? And what's my balance?
Love it.
Overdrawn is under recovered, and you can walk that line. And let me tell you, it's as simple as 5 pounds less or 5 pounds more. It's as simple as 8 ounces of water more, 8 ounces of fish more, right? And it's the difference between one more set or one more rep or one more. The thing about the interface of the human body is that it's so sensitive. Think of it this way: like if I jab myself with a little bit of insulin, this much could put me in the ground. Why? Because of the signaling process of the body is so unbelievably efficient. Small hinges open massive physiological doors. And sometimes it's the doors you keep closed that are the ones that help you recover.
I love it. I think it's a great way to close. So now, Chris, let's close out with our question.
Great. So we have a question from Emmy.
I love it.
Here we go.
Hi, Don and Dr. Shadow. My name is Amy, and my question for you today is how to physically prepare after ACL surgery to go back to high-impact activities. Thanks.
Well, Emmy, first off, try not to drive and
Respect.
at the same time.
I was hoping she was smoking inside the car with the windows up.
Emmy, we want you to be safe. I mean, best of luck. And she said recovering
ACL?
from ACL, I think.
Okay, yeah. I mean, ACLs are... I'm going to answer the question specifically to the ACL and maybe give a broader heuristic to post-op recovery in general. So one, before we go recovering the ACL, we got to figure out, well, what does it do, right? So the ACL is a ligament that goes from the outside of the femur to the medial inside aspect of the tibia. So it goes from the shin to the leg, and it stops the shin from going forward, right? So the technical term would be an ACL limits anterior translation of the tibia. So we don't want that to happen, right? So first off, that
just made me cringe. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, whenever we injure anything, we need to understand that an injury is an equation. Applied force greater than tissue tolerance, right? Everything from a laceration to a herniation is the same equation. Applied force greater than tissue tolerance, right? The applied force of the knife is greater than the tissue tolerance of the skin. The applied force of the weight on the bar is greater than the tissue tolerance of the lumbar disc. Right? It is all that basic equation. And once we've exceeded tissue tolerance, we have the presence of tissue damage due to the applied force. When we're dealing with ACLs and we look at this and we go, okay, well, what happened? There's a lot of different ways you can tear an ACL, right? You can get slide tackled, and you can get, Nancy Kerrigan with a bat. You can get, you can get a non-contact injury, which is fairly common in sports. Like, you ever watch a football game and then all of a sudden there's some guy just like laying down, and they're like, they're driving out on the golf cart, the ATs come out and they're like, oh, what's happening? And it's like, well, behind the play, number 8 has gone down for the offense. Well, let's see what's going on. We're going to run the tape back here, Bob. Well, Bob, you see right there, he just fell over. So you can have non-contact ACL injuries, and you're like, okay, well, there's when we look at rehab, a lot of times we look at balancing one side of the equation. How do we improve the tissue tolerance? So a lot of ACL rehab is focused on, in a conventional sense, strengthening the knee, which is absolutely beneficial. But as you get out of those initial phases, we decrease inflammation, we improve passive range of motion. We want to get to a point of like, why did we apply so much force to this thing to begin with? Right? Because that's the real cash value.
Well, why did this happen?
Why did this happen to begin with? Like, is our pelvis putting our femur in a bad position?
Right.
Was our ankle putting our tibia in a bad position? Was there a combination of both? Why this ACL and not that ACL? Right? And these are questions you ask with non-traumatic injuries. Which
it's like X doesn't always mark the spot just because the issue is there. Where is it coming from? Right?
So, and that's where you start to get a little bit more integrated. Like, well, what's going on with the hip and pelvis? Do we have an issue with the core? Is there an issue with the foot or the ankle? All of these things can stack up to increase applied force. Because let me tell you, you can improve tissue tolerance till the cows come home. But if you haven't changed the underlying mechanic in cases where this is relevant, you're setting yourself up for failure, because there's not a knee on the planet or a patella graft on the planet that's going to hold up to the same repetitive or acute trauma through the same path,
over and over and
the
over.
same applied force, right? Like, I always tell a story. I grew up with this kid, He was actually a client of mine, and he got stabbed 3 weekends in a row. And it would be I'd be a very bad friend if after the second weekend I told him like, hey man, when you go out, wear like chainmail or like a vest. The better friend says, please, the same nightclub, do not go to that nightclub. You remove the applied force. You don't increase the tissue tolerance, right? Don't go, oh yeah, have fun. Here, take this vest. It's like there's an Italian restaurant on the East End where no one ever in the history has been stabbed there. Go there instead.
Right.
Because it's changing the applied force. But so much in rehab is, again, wrong philosophy. Strength, 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 strength. Quality,
right.
Quantity, 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 quantity. It's like you're playing the wrong game, right? How do we decrease the applied force? How do we move better so that this ACL is not bearing the brunt of the load? Because if we don't address that, you may as well sign up for the countdown for your next ACL.
And that's where you really need a competent physical therapist or strength and conditioning coach, or someone who's going to be able to assess you, to be able to point out, well, this might have started because of this.
Right.
Which a lot of times we don't see. We will see surgeons just diagnose the problem. But there's always been a bit of a disconnect there, right, between surgery and physical therapy. Like I'm almost shocked how most surgeons don't have a whole team of PTs or strength and conditioning coaches in their back pockets.
It's getting better.
Yeah, it is. But
yeah.
Emmy, hope that's helpful. And again, brother, thank you. Gonna have you on a bunch more. There's a whole other list of topics and questions that I have. Thank you, Jordan. The best. See you soon.
The views, information, or opinions expressed in the series are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Chip and Joanna Gaines, Binel Audio, nor Magnolia.